today, what I'm going to talk to you about is something that hasn't been so easy to kind of get to the bottom of because it's very, very complex. And that's some things to do with the Holidays Act, because the Holidays Act is kind of like the gift that just keeps on giving. It really does. It's just a very, very complex piece of legislation. So what I want to talk to you about today is something that we've been working on to try and make that a little bit easier. And that's this idea of holding annual leave balances in weeks. So why on earth would it be a useful idea to hold annual leave balances in weeks? Well, just a little bit of background here. Okay, so we have to look at the Act. And if we have a look at the Act, we have to go to Section 16 of the Holidays Act. And Section 16 of the Holidays Act says that at the end of 12 months of continuous employment, an employee is entitled to no less than 4 weeks of paid annual holidays. Okay, no less than 4 weeks of paid annual holidays. But we know that in Smart Payroll and in many other payroll systems, annual leave is not held in weeks, it's held in hours. Okay. Now the first thing though I want to point out is that that is perfectly all right. Okay, you can hold it in hours, it's fine, as long as those hours genuinely reflect what constitutes a week for the employee. So there's a translation involved. Okay, as long as it genuinely constitutes what a week is for the employee, you're absolutely fine. So if you consider Fred, so Fred's our normal full-time employee, okay? He works 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, that's 40 hours per week. So converting Fred into weeks from hours, it is really easy, it's really simple maths. It's just 40 hours a week times 4 is 160 hours. That's simple maths, right? And really, for a lot of people, it doesn't matter if they're part-time as well, if they're working 20 hours a week, it's just simple maths. It's 20 times 4, 80 hours a week. That's absolutely 80 hours of annual entitlement each year. That's absolutely fine. For a lot of people, the story just ends there. So if the working pattern doesn't change, nothing happens. It's very, very easy. But what happens if things do change? What happens then? Okay, let's move on to, let's take Mary. Okay. So Mary, she starts on a part-time basis of 3 days a week. That's 8 hours a day or 24 hours per week. 24 hours per week as a part-timer. Now, halfway through the year, business conditions are good. You're happy with Mary. She's working out really well, and the opportunity arises that you can allow her to become a full-time employee. So now she's going to go from her 24 hours a week to 40 hours a week. She's going to be a full-time employee. That happens halfway through the year. Okay, so let's say she comes up to her anniversary, her 12-month anniversary, and she's going to get her annual leave entitlement. So what is her entitlement after 12 months? So let's start off looking at her entitlement in weeks, and let's make it multi-choice. Okay, so we're going to have a little test here. It's multi-choice, 12 months, her entitlement comes up. Her entitlement to annual leave is what? Is it A, 4 weeks, B, 4 weeks, C, 4 weeks, or D, 4 weeks? So the answer is 4 weeks, yes. I mean, if multi-choice was like this when I was at school, I would have done really well. It's obvious that it's 4 weeks, okay, that's what the Act says. She's entitled to 4 weeks after 12 months of continuous employment. Okay, but we know that Smart Payroll is holding annual leave in hours, okay? So let's look at the same test if we're looking at her entitlement after 12 months in hours. Is her entitlement A, 96 hours, that's 24 hours, remember she started at 24 hours, so 24 times 4 is 96. Is it B, 128 hours, that's halfway between her 48 hours, at 96 hours and 160 hours? Is it C, 160 hours, which is her 40 hours full-time equivalent now, or is it D, open all hours? B? I hear B's and C's. So remember, one of the fundamental principles, is that employees are entitled to 4 weeks of annual leave after 12 months of service. And one of the important principles as well is that the entitlement is determined in relation to the work pattern at the time the leave is taken. Okay? And because it's the time the leave is taken, it's important to uphold that principle. So the correct answer is C, 160 hours. Because her working week at the time she becomes entitled to that leave and at the time she takes that leave, it's going to be 40 hours. Okay, so that's her normal week, and it's important that she gets 160 hours because that is an equivalent of what her week is at the time she takes the leave. And the main point I'm emphasising here, it's important to maintain that equivalence to 4 weeks in hours at the time the leave is taken. Okay. So let's look at one more example here, now most problematic kind of employee. Let's look at Sue. So Sue, she works irregular hours and irregular days. She has some minimum agreed hours in her employment agreement, but she regularly picks up extra shifts. Okay, so she often does that. She thinks that those are going to be available. It means that she could be working anything between 1 and 6 days a week and anything between 10 and 50 hours every week. Okay, so she's genuinely variable. She works all over the show. So Sue gets to her 12-month anniversary. And she's entitled to her annual leave. So let's do it again. Let's look at a multi-choice test. So what is her entitlement after 12 months? Is it A, 4 weeks? Is it B, I don't know how many days? Is it C, some number of hours? Or is it D, why the face? Right. So really the only answer to the question really that makes any sense is A, it's 4 weeks. It's really not possible to grant a fixed entitlement to Sue because the hours and days that Sue is working is a constantly moving target. So what a week is for Sue is quite a moving target, and it changes over time. So what I hope you can see from the examples is that what starts off as kind of like quick and simple maths, and it is quick and simple maths for a majority of people, can sometimes morph into something a little bit more complicated. So first of all, I want to point out, yes, it is okay to hold your annual leave entitlement in weeks, provided you can show that clear equivalence. If you can show the clear equivalence, it's absolutely fine. But you do have to remember, if they do change their working patterns halfway through the year, you need to make sure that you are recalculating or modifying their entitlements to make sure that that equivalence is maintained.